Alright, let's see if we're doing okay. Alright, we're live now. So yeah, we're live. So, first things first, I'm a little ill. I'm a little under the weather, so if I sound ill, I am. So a little context for that. So let's without further ado, let's just get into Domo being Domo, as he has been for a while. I have no preamble for this. We're just gonna get right into it. So let's see how things go with this. We're gonna be watching the one with hitboxes. There's a lot of tabs here. So you got projectiles through walls, fire through wall, a few hitboxes, generous fire, actively swinging, broken giants, weapons extending forward, refuse to hit, grab teleporting, grab hit. I see a lot of footage from Dark Souls 1 and 3. So I'm assuming he's just going to ignore Dark Souls 2 hitboxes being problematic, so this will be interesting to say the least. ADP, DS1, and DS3. Okay, this video seems a bit all over the place, so let's see how it goes. This is a long one, too. This is 35 minutes, so we're going to be here for a while. Hey, sheep. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, we're going to get into this and see how things go.
Conversely, there are many moments in which your weaponry can deal damage when it had absolutely no business in doing so. What?
Does he not understand what a spin attack is?
Alright. We're 8 seconds in. We already got something that we need to talk about, so let's slow this fucker down. Let's go back and rewatch this clip. Alright, let's go back a little bit. He's running away. Alright, so this is going to be bad. It might be bad. The hitboxes are probably one of the most definable problems with Dark Souls 2, and the fact that his video is so massive is gonna say some shit. Alright, but let's watch this. So let's watch this again. Facing away from enemy. Does an attack. Somehow he spins around. Doesn't actually end up hitting the enemy. And then Domo just assumes it's because he did a roll attack or some shit, which he clearly didn't do.
What?
Does he not understand what a spin attack is?
I like how he does the roll thing when Mahler didn't even roll in his own clip. He turned around. Which is not the same thing mechanic. Like, we're 15 seconds in, man. Come on. You're already putting two things together that are not the same.
But it is simply a matter of bad hitboxes regardless.
We can see that the hit connected.
Because if I slow...
Oh, see, this is another one, right? Where the enemy's attack is winding up, but the winding up includes a hitbox, which is incredibly frustrating when the enemy's attack actually hasn't gone through. This is the wind up. Let's watch this one little clip again against the Haid Knight.
But it is simply a matter of bad hitbox.
See, the enemy's attack has not gone through yet. He just raises his sword up. The attack is not going through. Like, the hitbox for their sword is just immediately activated, even though the attack has not gone through. It's like, yeah, while it's realistic that a sword should do damage no matter when you touch it, right? This is one of those things where the attack's not gone through yet, and you're still taking damage.
Boxes regardless.
We can see that the hit connected.
Because if I slow this one down here, you can see the rat in the back taking damage when I was nowhere near hitting him.
He hit the tail, which deals damage to rats in every single Souls game.
All right, let's go back and see if this clip is. Let's watch that rat clip
Regardless.
again.
We can see that the hit connected.
Because if I slow this one down here, you can see the rat.
Okay, so. Whoa, shit, didn't mean to do that. Can this thing go any higher? The quality of this video is not turning out very well during some of these clips.
Because if I slow this one
This is the thing, right? Like, that tail's got to be really far away.
down here, you can see the rat.
Yeah, see, that tail on the rat is nowhere near long enough to get hit by this attack with this weapon. Like, that hitbox is going way too far out to take damage on the rat's part, or this weapon's hitbox is way too big and is hitting that rat for some reason.
Rat in the back taking damage when I was nowhere near hitting him.
He hit the
He's going to defend Sir Alon teleporting you into his grab, lol. Well, here's the thing. Sir Alon's one of the ones that I've seen a lot of footage of where his grab screws up, but I have personally never had his grab screw up on me. So I don't know if that's a difference between Scholar versus the base game, or like a difference in ADP numbers or something. But I personally, like, in the thousands of hours I've played Dark Souls 2, I've actually never had the Alon grab screw up on me. So this is one of those things where my experience with the game does not match some of the footage that Mahler had. Now, granted, Mahler has raw footage of it working poorly, so, I mean, that is evidence in itself. But it is one of those things where I've not personally had an issue with it, so I don't know how big of a problem it actually is. I mean, obviously it is a problem if you can get footage of it happening, and you can get it happening relatively consistently. But it is one of those things where I do think that the Alon grab is something we should talk about to some degree, because it's a weird thing.
the tail, which deals damage to rats in every single Souls game.
I haven't either, but it is there, and a number of people have experienced it, so it's worth bringing up. Yeah, that's true. It's just, I think it's worth bringing up that, like, in tons of hours playing the game, it has also not happened. It's one of those weird... And this is one thing about Dark Souls 2 that's weird, is because ADP affects iframes, it's difficult to figure out whether the problem was an ADP numbering thing, or if it was a hitbox on a part of the boss, right? That's why this discussion is so muddled a lot of times. It's because people will just keep jacking up their ADP stat and get more iframes per roll, and other times people won't do ADP because they either A, don't know, or B, are trying not to play the games, you know. But it is one of those weird things where, like, certain hitboxes just feel strange because of the different ways the hitboxes are affected by the ADP affecting iframes, and the fact that some of the hitboxes in Dark Souls 2 are just wonky, right? Whether you want to call them bad or good, there are a lot of hitboxes in Dark Souls 2 that have some wonky shit going on. See, look at that. He hit that rat from way closer than Mahler hit that other one, right? So this evidence is not nearly the same. You know, he keeps just doing the basic shit of, hey, look, I killed a rat from behind where I hit his tail. Then Mahler's clip is like, I'm not even sure he actually hit the tail.
Without the 8-directional movement of DS2, I'm messing up jumps and jump attacks so often.
Wow, that's just a fucking stupid point. Let's go back to this DS3 clip and watch him just fail to use the basic mechanic of lock-on for attacking.
Without the 8-directional movement of DS2, I'm messing up jumps and jump attacks so often.
Man, you are digging the bottom of the barrel, Domo, if you are going to bring that point up in a tunnel with a single rat raping the corner, and you can't even use lock-on you can't use the basic mechanics that are in all the games to fight this enemy the way the game has built itself so you can fight this enemy. You're just being a pretentious prick at this point.
The longsword hitbox is also not any less accurate than in the other Souls games.
This is one of those things too, right? Where this is part of the problem with people that respond to each other and they have different sort of sets of information, right? Like, as far as I can tell, I don't think Mahler's ever actually gone back and looked at the hitboxes directly from like the in-game stuff, right? I don't know if he's ever done that. He's done it purely based on player experience, right? Which is pretty normal, you know. But this is one thing too. If the hitboxes are having issues, if the hitboxes are having issues in the game and players can see them, and we see compilations all over YouTube of Dark Souls 2 having bad hitboxes, right? And this is the thing. All the other games also have issues too, right? But Dark Souls 2 has a significant increase in hitbox problems. Just because we see the hitboxes work when you get behind the curtain, as it were, just because you see them being accurate doesn't excuse the fact that tons of people are having hitbox issues, right? Because games are weird in that way where just because the mechanics of one thing work for that thing and the mechanics of one thing of another thing work for that thing, when the two come together, there can be issues, right? Either glitches or just the design doesn't account for each other, so the hitboxes get weird. There are different things that can affect this, and this is one of those things where he's shown a hitbox of a rat, and then he's shown a hitbox of a sword, but he's not shown how those two things work together when they are actually in the same situation that Mahler showed, right? This is one of those things where, going purely off of Mahler's footage, it looks like the hitboxes are bad because we haven't seen, the hitboxes be like we haven't seen him do weird shit. And this is one thing, you're basically showing hitboxes of different things, but you're not showing them in the same context that Mahler showed them when he was attacking someone with a weapon. You just brought up the hitboxes of a rat in isolation, then you brought up the hitbox of a sword in isolation, and then you showed a clip of you hitting a rat from behind in Dark Souls 1 when you were way closer to that rat in Dark Souls 1 than Mahler was in Dark Souls 2. You're showing a bunch of evidence that is relatively connected to what's going on, but you're not trying to recreate the same scenario and explain why Mahler's footage is wrong. You're just bringing up a bunch of stuff that is vaguely similar and then saying Mahler's wrong. You had your conclusion and you're bringing your evidence up to fit that conclusion, as opposed to trying to recreate the scenario that Mahler said and show the hitboxes during that. It's that thing where he's picking and choosing the evidence to support his conclusion instead of looking at the evidence and seeing where that leads him. Consider locking on, and of course you feel this way. You need the 8-directional movement because of your extreme bias for Dark Souls 2. Yeah, and because he can't control his controller better. If you have to default to 8 snap points, then you're probably not that good at controlling your character to begin with. So, in light of you calling Mahler a skill issue player, I'm going to direct that right back at you and say, get good with controlling your character. The tons of people except for Domo LeMayo, he's never had a single issue in Dark Souls 2 ever. Yeah, and this is one thing, if he brought up, like, something where he could see... Like, if he brought up a point that was in Mahler's favor, or admit when something was correctly brought up, or when he levied a criticism at Dark Souls 2, that would go a long way for showing that he's not just a DS2 fanboy. Like DS2 fanboys claim that a lot of us are DS1 fanboys, right? He comes across as the person that cannot criticize his game, because based on all the footage we've seen, I think he may have made maybe one comment that was not intended to be a criticism, but it can be seen as a criticism, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't intended to be a criticism, right? Like, he's hardly done anything to criticize Dark Souls 2 at this point. And it comes across as he's just desperately trying to defend the game he loves, and he won't take any sort of criticism of the game. If you could at least mention that he sees why this would be a reasonable issue for other players, it would not be so easy to dunk on him. Yeah, well, it's just that thing. He comes across like a obsessive fanboy who hates that people don't like this game. Instead of talking about the evidence in the game for why people would have problems or praises, he's just saying you're wrong if all... He just keeps saying you're wrong, and here's random clips that I've put together to make you think that you're wrong, when some of these clips aren't really related to the clips. Like, these aren't counter clips to Mahler's thing. You just keep showing different clips that are vaguely similar in some way, and you try to get some snide comment in, but it doesn't actually lead to anything because your snide comment doesn't work against Mahler's videos, like clips that you've shown, because you haven't recreated the encounter. You've just shown me random facts about the rat hitbox, about the sword hitbox, that DS1 allows you to kill them from behind when you hit the tail, right? And that clip isn't even the same as the one Mahler showed, because Mahler is way farther away from that second rat than you were at that one rat in Dark Souls 1. Like, you're not showing comparable clips. They're only comparable on... They're barely comparable on paper. And contextually, they're not the same either. You know, it's just that thing where every time you do that, it makes the audience aware that you are not doing this in good faith. You're just desperately trying to get any point across that will make Mahler look stupid and make your game look good by comparison to Dark Souls 1. That's how it's coming across. And I know that tons of the comments of this are super positive of this video series, right? And that's partially because, you know, people hate Mahler. People hate DS2, and people hate DS2 haters, right? People also hate DS2 criticizers, right? I'm not a Dark Souls 2 hater, I'm a Dark Souls 2 criticizer, right? And these people lump us in with the people that genuinely do hate the game. I don't hate the game, I love playing the game, but it has significant issues. And they just cannot acknowledge it because it breaks their worldview for some reason. Like, of all the hills to die on, this is a strange one. I don't understand what this clip is.
Especially in DS3, there's a lot of weapons with much more inflated hitboxes than in DS2.
Alright, are we going to get back to Dark Souls 2 anytime soon? The criticism was of Dark Souls 2, dude. He's just doing that same... We need to make like a bingo card, you know, and put on it, criticizes the other games instead of defending Dark Souls 2. That needs to be on there. Chooses evidence that is only vaguely similar to the scenarios Mahler brought up. Smugly thinks he's right when his footage shows otherwise. We really should have like a bingo card. It'd be fun. Pointless little praise here, but I really love DS2's two-handed moveset for straight swords. It's way cooler. Yeah, I mean, I think Dark Souls 2 introduced a lot of cool weapon ideas. Like, I'm a big fan of the twin blades. I really like the twin blades in the game. Especially the, what is it called? The red iron twin blade? That's a great weapon. I think it's a great mix of strength and dex weapons. Yeah. This is also one thing, too, where... Is one thing where, like, when it comes to player hitboxes versus like, enemy hitboxes, I think you can make an argument in favor of the player's hitboxes being a little bit bigger. Just because the player is fighting against the game, and the game has several different things that they can use against the player that the player cannot use against them. You know what I mean? So I feel like there is an argument to be made that sometimes hitboxes for players don't have to be as sharp as ones for enemies. Now, I'd rather hitboxes be consistent across all of them, but I think there is a decent argument you can make in the player's favor where, you know, the players should be able to deal with things, you know, and if they want to give them a little leeway, that can also help. Yes, the Red Iron Twin Blade is so awesome, I'm probably going to pick it up on my strength playthrough. I might pick it up on the playthrough I'm doing, but I'm debating if I want to play. So here's the thing about this Dark Souls run that I'm planning to do throughout the trilogy after we get through this series. I'm thinking that, and let me know what you think about this, Sheep. I'd like to do the same build throughout all three games, but at the same time, I can't do some of the same builds throughout the three games just because the weapons are different, right? Like, as far as I remember, there's no twin blades in Dark Souls 1, so I can't do a twin blade build throughout all three games. I was thinking about doing a glass cannon build throughout all three games and using the same weapon, that Ultra Great Sword, as just kind of a point to show that I'm playing the games largely the same way. That way we have the biggest comparison possible between all three games in terms of how difficult they are. You know? I thought about doing that just because I like playing the glass cannon builds in Dark Souls 2 and 3. Dark Souls 1 would be a little weird because I wouldn't be able to get the Great Sword, the Ultra Great Sword, until later. Because I don't remember where you pick it up from, but I know you can buy it from that guy in Sen's Fortress. I don't know. Either way, you know the weird thing about this is just like this intro is just a mixture of different things. It's not really an introduction to what we're talking about. It's just kind of like here's a bunch of random footage.
when they really shouldn't be. So first of all, this is pertaining to the absolutely terrible bonus that projectiles have of escaping through walls.
Which also happens in every single Souls game. Even during boss...
What the fuck? But Domo, that's not even remotely the same.
When they really should.
Alright, so... projectile goes right through the edge of that texture. That's bad. There is no gap between that. That is not even remotely the same fucking footage, Domo. This arrow... Oh wait, is he talking about that going through there? Now that is bad, right? That is bad. This is one thing, though. How do those fuckers aggro to you from through there? I've only ever seen them aggro from up here whenever I play the game. Maybe that's like a glitch or something. I don't know. This is I've not had this happen very often. I wonder if he aggroed them and ran back just to test it. Either way, that was my bad. I read that wrong, but still, just countering that is just
which
weird.
Also happens in every single Souls game. Even during boss fights.
This guy does a fire.
Wait, so what's this Dark Souls 3 clip he's using?
Even during boss fights.
This guy does a...
Wait, so what is this? I'm having a hard time figuring out where these projectiles are supposed to be coming from in the Dark Souls 3 clip.
Even during boss fights.
Okay, see, I'm pretty sure all of these guys can summon those little orbs, so I think that second one came through the objective, but I'm not sure. I don't know. This is one thing, too, is he throws up these clips and then doesn't really explain what's in them, right? Like, he just throws up a clip that's like 2 seconds long, then moves on to another one, right? There's hardly any time to digest them, and he doesn't really explain where the problem ultimately is in them. So it's a thing where we have to go back and peel through it, like, frame by frame almost, to figure out what he's actually trying to say. Which isn't good, because it's, you know, just us going through the motions of watching him say, look, other games had issues too. Yeah, that'd be great. The Ultra Great Sword from DS2. You'll love it if you haven't used it. Oh, I use it a lot. I use the Ultra Great Sword in Dark Souls 2 a lot. The only problem is I need to figure out where it is because I think it moved spots from base game to Scholar, and so I don't know where it is in Scholar, but I can look that up. See, it's on these points where he should be going into detail and specifically pointing out that the arrow goes through the wall. Yeah, it's one of those things where you can miss that if you're, you know, because again, it's that thing where you're putting two clips together that are dissimilar, right? Because Mahler's clip had the projectile go through a wall that was right next to him, right? The Dark Souls 1 clip had the thing go through a wall that was way away from you, right? So it's very weird to see it. It's coming from the Archdeacon. He's likely on the other side of that coffin, and it's honestly bad. It shamelessly goes through walls. Yeah, well, this is one thing, too. If you get to this point in this fight, you're probably not doing what you're supposed to in this fight. Like, this is one of those fights where you need to be aware of what the gimmick is and attack. You know? Like this is sort of like the end stage of this fight, where if you aren't doing what you're supposed to by this point, then you're probably screwed anyway. But yeah, those things going through the coffin are bad, right? But again, this is not really a defense of Dark Souls 2 when you're bringing in stuff from Dark Souls 3 later on. You know, it's that thing where you're not really defending your game, you're just saying all the games have the problem, which also means Dark Souls 2 has the problem too. You're not defending the game, you're just making fun of the other games, expecting that to be a defense of the original game that you're defending. See, you came into a rant, can see this being more fun. Yeah. In Scholar, you can buy it from the headless guy in Shaded Woods or find it in a chest in No Man's Wharf. That's the thing, like, I think they moved it in No Man's Wharf, because didn't it used to be next to, Gablan? Also true, you should not be going that far from the Deacons unless you need to heal, which we can't see because the fucking HUD is missing. Yeah. Well, this is one thing, too. Because he's got all these cheats and stuff available to see all the things behind the scenes, it makes me question how much footage is natural versus him creating stuff, right? That's one of the things from Mahler's footage is he never has cheats on, like, ever in any of the clips. I don't even know if he knows how to do that. So all of his stuff seems like a player figuring it out. But anyway, let's get back to this.
This guy does a fire attack. Oh, come on!
Sure, that one feels bad, but fire has always been a bit janky. For ceaseless discharge, you were led to believe that this is a safe space to heal. The lava of Quelag is so janky that you will often take damage despite it looking completely safe. But other times the lava does not even do anything.
I mean, again, this is one of those things where I've not experienced this issue. And with your HUD off and all the cheats you've shown, it makes me wonder if you're tampering with evidence, right? This is part of the problem of when you bring up cheats and stuff, is like, it makes me unsure if this footage is real or not, especially when you're hiding your HUD. You know, we have no idea what else you're hiding. Right? And I've never experienced this with Quelag, like, ever. Like, the only time that I've experienced this issue is when I did an all-boss run, which was already fucking with the mechanics of the game because we've got boss stuff all over the place. That was the only time I ever dealt with issues of this hitbox being weird. And that was only when I was purposely fucking with the game's mechanics because I was replacing every enemy with Quelag. This is one thing, like, fire attacks have been kind of weird throughout the series, especially when you do the cone effect type of thing. You know, this is one of those things where I'd like to see what he thinks of this. You know, like, this is one of those things where he's going to criticize this in other games, but he's not going to bring up any of the fire problems in Dark Souls 2, right? He's never going to bring up any of the dragon enemies having hitbox issues with their cone effects. He's not going to bring up Ancient Dragon with his significant hitbox problems. He's probably not going to bring any of those up. It'll be that thing where he's like, look, other games have problems too. It's like, okay, that doesn't defend Dark Souls 2 from having the same problems as well. It's like, just because other games had a problem doesn't mean Dark Souls 2 gets away with having that problem tenfold. I feel like we're going to repeat this for the next, like, 30 minutes. Let's see. It's Gavlan they moved. Sword is in the same place it was in base. Okay, thanks for reminding me. It's moved into a room above one with a bunch of those dark dwellers. Yeah. At this point, I would love for Domo to have a second guy who strictly plays on console and tests this stuff. Yeah. Well, this is one thing, too, is Mahler had multiple friends playing the game with footage that he had examples of. As far as I can tell, this is all Domo, and we have no idea, you know, we have no idea what kind of, like, shenaniganery he may or may not have done, given the fact that he's shown that he can do cheat stuff. You know, again, that cheat stuff and then hiding the HUD all the time, it's one of those things that really makes the experience strange, because I don't know how much of your footage is honest, because I can see that you can fuck with the AI in the game, right? I can see that you can cheat with things in the game. So it makes me suspicious of your evidence when you hide all this shit. This is one thing, too. Like, I've only played the game by myself. I don't have any friends that play this, because most of them don't really care. But it's one of those things where it's just like, you know, you're not doing yourself any favors by not showing other people's footage and also bringing in cheats all the time to show stuff.
You want to jump down from this bridge, so they should have at least made the flames match the hitbox, as the first few feet of the bridge look safe.
This fundamentally is about the ability to simply hit you thanks to the extremely...
He has no agility and the attack hit his legs. As we can see, that attack has a pretty tight hitbox.
Alright, let's go back to Fortia's footage. Let's watch this in slow motion. Alright, see, alright, let's go, let's see if we can catch the... Let's see if we can catch the hitbox of Fortia getting hit.
This fundamentally is about...
Alright, see, look at that, right? His health bar has not gone down, the weapon is right there. Fortia is rolling away from the weapon, and it doesn't look like his leg is touching it whatsoever. Still gets hit anyway.
Simply...
This is one of those things where... all of the footage of these hitboxes being weird is in Mahler's series, and in other people's videos as well. This goes beyond ADP at this point. This is a hitbox for something being fucked up somewhere, right? And this could be a thing where, you know, this is one thing. Hey, Domo, in your infinite wisdom, how about you show the hitbox of the weapon, show the hitbox of the player, and then show any changes the hitboxes have when the hitbox is near a player. Right? I would not be surprised if the player's hitbox when rolling gets bigger, based on some of the footage I've seen, right? And is in Mahler's series. I would not put it past the developers to make the hitbox bigger against the player of where their sort of damage gets taken from. I would not put it past them, because some of this footage just does not make sense if the hitboxes are tight, right? And this is one thing too. If we fall back on ADP being the problem, you are still creating hitboxes that have issues because you fucked with the iframe system via a leveling stat as opposed to it being natural based on the equip load you have. Either way, it's a problem. And either way, it comes back to hitboxes looking bad, right? Whether it's the hitboxes during combat or it's the hitboxes because of ADP, right? If you have to level up a stat to make hitboxes work properly, that's a problem. If your hitboxes don't work consistently, that's also a problem. ADP is not the way out, right? ADP should not be your thing to fix the issue. This should be working consistently from the get-go. And yeah, not all the other games have perfect hitboxes 100% of the time, right? But Dark Souls 2 has a noticeable drop in terms of working hitboxes. That's a big problem. It's all Domo. He hides the HUD, never criticizes DS2 at all, is extremely smug. It makes for untrustworthy evidence. Yeah. Okay, that DS3 one does actually happen with the Dragonfire, but I'm going to pull a Domo here. You're not supposed to go that way, idiot. Yeah. See, like, here's the thing. Let's flip some of Domo's arguments. See, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to shoot this... You're supposed to shoot the dragons with bow arrows from down there where they can't hit you, from where the bonfire is. Because the game gives you mechanics and options to do that from down there if you get a bow or a great bow and then the ammo to use it. Why aren't you using the environment to your advantage, Domo, in that clip? Why aren't you playing in such a niche way like you did in Dark Souls 2? Why aren't you doing that, bud?
Actually,
let me just go back to regular speed here. Going through this series is mind-numbing. It's just so mind-numbing. We've already been here for half an hour. We're 3 minutes in.
Thanks to the extremely...
He has no agility and the attack hit his legs. As we can see, that attack has a pretty tight hitbox.
I'm really getting annoyed at all these extra clips he throws in that don't really do anything. It's like putting in a clip of the hitboxes of Dark Souls 2 looks like you're defending Dark Souls 2, right? Why are you putting in these random clips of Dark Souls 3 hitboxes that also work? Like, how does this actually affect your argument in any way? Like, what do these clips actually prove, given the point that you just set up? It's like, yes, hitboxes work, and they work in the other games. Is that what you're trying to get across? This is going to be so fun to do every time he tries to criticize the other games. You just flip it back where he's not doing something incredibly niche to deal with the problem.
chunky hitboxes the enemies will sometimes have.
Yeah, that one is one of the few that are actually pretty inflated.
Hey, he actually admitted a criticism. Good job, Domo. You've leveled up. Good job. Only took you, what, like, probably like an hour and some change to levy a criticism at Dark Souls 2?
But it's not like this is unheard of in this series.
Oh, now he's trying to excuse it. Never mind. He's taking it back.
Hey, buddy. How you doing? Oh, that seemed a little...
That one is again not that bad when compared to the other Souls games. In DS1, thrust attacks covered the whole weapon. And here the
Hey, I like to bring something up during that one little clip. Hey, look, he hit its leg, just like in Dark Souls 2. Can't show this clip as bad. If you're going to defend Dark Souls 2 doing it, then we can defend Dark Souls 1 doing it.
And here the shaft hitbox is even more inflated.
Once again, we also have the reverse. You will oftentimes not take damage from enemies.
100% he would complain even if he did take damage from his arm. You cannot win with people that just want to complain.
What the fuck are you... We're talking about the hitboxes being inconsistent. He brings up the flexile sentry. He's just like, people will complain no matter what. It's like he's... Domo, do you understand that Mahler is going off of a standard here where the hitboxes should consistently work? Right? It's not that they shouldn't hit you at all. It's not that they should hit you every single time that they're roughly in the same vicinity as you. It's that they should be consistent with the size of the object that does the damage. That's his fucking point. You'd think after making a response series, you'd actually listen to the person you're criticizing. Skill issue, Domo. Have you considered strafing the thrust attack, you fucking game critic? Yeah.
Shaft hitbox is even more inflated.
Once again, we also have the reverse. You will oftentimes not take damage from enemies.
100% he would complain even if he did take damage from his arm. You cannot win with people that just want to complain.
You cannot win with people that just want to praise. A lot of these arguments are going to be flipped back on you, Domo. Just going to say that now. Oh my god, giving fair criticism is complaining now. Yeah, it's just brain rot. It's just lots of brain rot. And we've got so much left to go in this video. Thankfully, this is one of the chunkier ones, so hopefully this won't be too brain rotty.
The fact that you absolutely should.
Why did he include that clip of the hitbox clearly fucking up again? It's like your own footage is showing the problem that Mahler is talking about, and you're just choosing to ignore it. And Garrus and I got a little excited. We thought he leveled up, but no, he backpedaled to avoid criticizing the game. You'll see what happened is he killed a boss in a Dark Souls game, and then immediately got killed by something dumb, so he lost all his souls. Resources dumped.
Should.
The visible flames are larger than the hitbox, but this works in favor of the player.
I mean, if anything, isn't this like a badly made hitbox altogether? Because you've got these weird little like divots in between each of these hitbox orbs. I mean, again, this is one of those things where shouldn't the hitbox be a big circular effect? Like, shouldn't this be a giant orb as opposed to a bunch of little chunky orbs?
It might be a bit more generous, but really not any different to other dragons in the Souls series. If fire is implemented poorly, the hitbox extends further than the visible flames, but in most cases from soft is generous.
I mean, again, I've got no idea if he's tampering with this at all. You know? It's just one of those things. I feel like we're going to make the same points for the next, like, 30 minutes of this video, so I might kind of go silent for a while unless he says something new, because going through the same bingo points over and over gets really boring. Man, look at how tight those hitboxes are and how many of them there are to, like, fit the attack. That's way better than all those, like, big orbs around. Like you can even... okay, let's go back and watch some of these fire attacks, right? Let's go back and watch some of these compared to Dark Souls 2 ones. Alright, this is going to be a long sort of clip, so... let's mute this, and then I'll just talk over it, right? Alright, so... you got this one. It's got its cone effect, alright? It's got a smaller cone near its head, a bigger one the further it goes out. Okay, that makes sense. It's like a cone effect. That's typically how cones work. They get bigger as they go out. Small orb, big orb. That makes sense. Then it turns into a bunch of random chunky orbs instead of just being a bigger orb. I don't know why that is. That seems like a weird way to design this particular hitbox. Right? Like this, it seems weird to have all these like circular things put together instead of having just one big orb that expands out. Right? This makes sense, right? One big orb that expands out in a big circle. And this one is, again, a different cone, and it levels up more often than the one in the Dark Souls 2 one that we saw. Alright, then this one shows a lot of orbs constantly expanding going through this. Right? And it looks like it should tag him, and it did tag him earlier, but I don't know why it didn't tag him then. And this might be one of those things where, like, because the attack comes out so fast, maybe the hitboxes don't like tap you as soon as they hit you if you've already been hit, sort of thing. I don't know. It's just a weird thing I've noticed, but like notice how the Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 hitboxes work better with the model of the attack, and the Dark Souls 2 ones get a little wonky here and there. It's one of those weird things where his footage is one of those things that's, yeah, the fire can be a little generous, but at the same time you're showing a different style of hitboxes between the ones in Dark Souls 2 and the ones in Dark Souls 1 and 3. That's one I like. I mean, see, look at all those fucking orbs to match the hitboxes. That is some good shit.
I can also stand invisible flames here, because what he complains about happens in every single Souls game.
I can stand invisible flames here. What? Scrumptious hitboxes. Can't expect anything less from Calamite. Like his hitboxes make sense, right? You have the orb of the fire coming down, then you have the expanding orb that hits the aura of the actual AoE move, like doing the area of effect shit, right? Like it's like this is a logical use of hitboxes. And this is one thing too, like hitboxes to match animations are very difficult to match, right? We see this in a lot of games, right? So what usually is the sweet spot is getting it as close as possible and maybe being a little generous, right? Dark Souls 2 kind of goes on the opposite end, which is part of the problem, right? Is the hitboxes themselves might not be too bad, but they might be a little overbearing considering the item or the thing causing the hitbox, right? And again, that's not to say the other games don't have that, but he's showing a lot of footage of hitboxes in other games, and then he shows one, maybe two clips of something in Dark Souls 2, right? He's showing a lot more evidence for the other games being good than for Dark Souls 2 being good. And that's the thing to pay attention to. Because if he went through all the hitboxes of all the different sort of cone effect attacks in Dark Souls 1, or in Dark Souls 2, you'd be able to see a significant difference between the average hitboxes and the way they look with the animations versus the ones in the other games. Because, you know, as you can see by tons of videos online, there are tons of hitbox issues with Dark Souls 2. And yeah, sometimes it happens in the other games, but Dark Souls 2 has it significantly worse. And this is one of the weird things that you can, again, notice in his clips. He's using a lot of clips of stuff from Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 1. He's not using that many Dark Souls 2 clips. He's not using that many, which should tell you something about sort of what he's working with in terms of resources in the game. Personally, I try to compare an even number of the three games. But this is one of those things where he shows like one clip of one enemy in Dark Souls 2, you know, with two attacks. Then he shows two attacks with the Nameless King's first phase. You got one attack with Calamite, two attacks with Calamite, three attacks with Calamite. You know, like the number for the other games is ticking up. Let him breathe, Vangeris. No, he's an AI voice. He doesn't need to breathe.
I can also stand invisible flames here, because what he complains about happens in every single Souls game.
Their attacks.
Again, he's missing Mahler's point. It's not about like there needs to be a consistency, right? And while all the games are not 100% consistent, Dark Souls 2 has the biggest disjointedness between being, you know, extremely consistent and extremely inconsistent. Right? Like, there's a good, probably, I'd say maybe like 80% consistency in Dark Souls 1 and 3. In Dark Souls 2, it's like 50-50 whether the hitbox will be too big or too small.
Can literally go through you.
Ooh, that was weird.
That's just the hitboxes working as intended.
That's just the hitboxes working as intended. The sword can just phase through you. That's intended.
The hitbox.
Again, I think this is going to be part of the problem, too, is just him not understanding Mahler's point. It's about consistency. It's not about how hard it is or how easy it is to deal with these attacks when they either A, hit you, or B, don't hit you. It's about the consistency of them.
Boxes are active as long as the enemies are actively swinging their weapons, but not.
The hitboxes are active as long as enemies are actively swinging their weapon. What, are you talking about, like when that Haid Knight can hit you even before his attack goes through? Did you think about that? Does it count when raising the sword?
Not while they are stopping the swing or just turning. That's.
Oh wait, see, look at that. The sword was raising, and the hitbox didn't start. It's a little weird how the Haid Knights don't do that.
Swinging their weapons, but not while they are stopping the swing or just turning.
Look at that. The hitbox starts like almost as soon as the blade comes down. Why do the Haid Knights immediately get a hitbox? Why do the Haid Knights immediately get a hitbox? Strange.
That's how you want them to function.
And this is the weird thing, too, is I agree with the point that Domo's making here. You want these things to function this way, where when the attack comes through, the hitbox activates, not during the wind-up. But at the same time, he's showed footage of other things and defended other clips of enemies having the problem, which is as soon as the attack animation begins, including the wind-up, the hitbox activates. Lucky him that that hitbox or that sword didn't clip him like you can see in several videos across the internet. That's real lucky.
And no, those huge hitboxes do not hurt the player. They are used to spawn the dust shockwaves on the ground. It has always worked the same way in any Souls game. If they are implemented well, the hitboxes are active as long as the enemy is actively swinging the weapon, but not towards the end of the animation where it is slowing down again.
This is one of those weird things where I would say that, like, I agree with this argument of having the main hit of the weapon be when the hitbox activates, but at the same time, he has defended parts where this does not happen. Like, this is an inconsistency the way he argues this. Funny how he can strafe Pursuer but can't strafe a Silver Knight in Anor Londo. Yeah. You're taking a thrust weapon attacker in Anor Londo and backing away from them. It's like that's one of the worst things you could do in that scenario. Again, just more clips.
Here we can also see the buggy loss of aggro he was complaining about that happens if you lure enemies outside their aggro range, which, like almost everything he accuses of being a unique issue of DS2, is actually happening in every Souls game. Seriously, if it wasn't the case that hitboxes turn off once enemies slow down their attack, he would be complaining about lingering hitboxes.
I mean, this is also a thing, too, where, again, just he keeps going after Mahler's point that Domo made up. Mahler's whole argument on that is consistency. That's why he shows clips of one thing on one side where the hitbox is too big, and then something on the other side where the hitbox doesn't happen at all. The problem is consistency. And right now, Domo's having problems with consistency.
I'm sorry?
Half the damage was from the explosion he was standing in, but the Giants are one of the very few enemies in this game with an actually broken hitbox.
Hey, he acknowledged it. Let's see if he backtracks it. But let's look at that hitbox for a second.
Actually broken hitbox.
Why is that hitbox extended so fucking far? What the hell is this? Like, the initial hitbox of the weapon is fucking fine. Why do we need this extra thing? What the hell? Domo, please don't backtrack, please. Another huge
They were
hitbox.
probably recycled from the scrapped last Archstone in Demon Souls and originally had flames extending out of their weapon and chest, but
They may be this thing from a game that we didn't see in a game. Woo. There's my theory out of the way. It's like, why'd you even bring it up?
Hitboxes were not adapted. This probably applies to ceaseless discharge as well.
Yeah. This is one thing. A lot of the Lost Izalith bosses have, like, the most issues of, like, any boss section of the game.
The hitbox is much too far forward than the model of the weapon, and enemies end up taking damage when they shouldn't be.
This is again something that can happen in every Souls game, as the weapon hitboxes are always a bit bigger than the model.
Wait, this is again Mauler's saying one thing and Domo's interpreting another. All right, let's go back and watch this Mauler clip. After we get through this silence,
The hitbox is much too far
forward
than the model of the weapon, and enemies end up taking damage when they shouldn't be.
All right, when enemies take damage when they shouldn't be because the hitbox model is too far forward. Let's watch and see what Domo says.
This is again something that can happen in every Souls game.
The hitbox is too far forward. Did you notice what Mauler's too far forward? Not the hitbox is too big. All right.
Damage when they shouldn't be.
This is again something that can happen in every Souls game, as the weapon hitboxes are always a bit bigger than the model. The one that I hit was far away from my weapon.
That was the extent of his clip. But now let's go back to Mauler's clip again, and let's see something. I hate that we keep coming back. All right, let's watch this in slow motion and mute it, because there's a point I'm going to make here. All right. So watch this. Watch when the damage comes through with his sword attack, right? Like, he gets stun locked out of it, okay. He goes to do an attack. The enemy hits him before his weapon connects, right? The bottom of his weapon, the hilt, hits this guy, kills him, right? That's what happens in this clip, right? Now let's watch Domo's clip where he attacks through a wall, and instead of hitting with the hitbox of his hilt, which would be around where his hand is. Let's see if I can pause it on the frame. This is one of those things where it's really hard to see it go through, but like, watch up here. You can barely see the tip of this blade and its hitbox go through the wall, which makes sense why this enemy would be tagged, but none of these other guys would. Yeah, like you can see like the blade bounce through for like a couple frames. It's hard for me to pause on them. See if I can. Damn it. I wish I could see it. This is the weird thing too. The video's at like 1080p and his footage is kind of blurry. All right, this is the last time I'm going to try to catch this because we got to move on. I don't want to spend all day. Ah, shit. But yeah, anyway, that's the whole point I wanted to make, is like, Mauler's talking about the hitbox of the weapon being moved forward when you're attacking and the enemy takes damage because they hit your hilt, as opposed to when your actual swing went through. And then this is when the hitbox of the weapon is a little big, so it hits an enemy through it because your weapon hitbox goes through the wall. Like, the hitbox doesn't stop when it hits the wall. It's a very different sort of thing.
That can happen in every Souls game, as the weapon hitboxes are always a bit bigger than the model.
I also wonder why he decided to attack through there. Like, this is the worst angle to put yourself in with this weapon. It's strange. Like, Domo's clips keep getting stranger and stranger.
The one that I hit was far away from my weapon.
Several times during combat.
Let's see, what was that DS3 clip? Alright, so like he hit that enemy because he the hitbox of the weapon collided at roughly the same time as it hit that thing. This is one thing that I'm kind of okay with, just because certain enemies don't get affected by the wall hitting thing. So I think countering that by letting the hitbox sort of go through a little bit extra, I think is a way around that where it feels less unfair to the player. I don't know which game has this, if all of them do, if only DS3 does or whatever, but I think this is one of those things where I could give this sort of screw up, or this, not the screw up, but this sort of thing a pass, because the enemies aren't affected by wall stuff like we are, right? Like when their weapons hit walls, they don't bounce off of it, right?
Several times during combat in Dark Souls 2, I found that weapons will actually go straight through targets and refuse to tag them.
For this one, he hit the wall and not the enemy.
He hit the wall and not the enemy. The sword is big enough to make that distance. Yeah, he clipped the wall, but the sword should still hit the fucking enemy. Hitting a wall should not negate the hitbox of the weapon.
The long sword does have a bit of a janky animation that will first aim up a bit, but as the hitbox does not extend further than the weapon, you actually need to connect with the tip. Here the tip only goes inside the enemy towards the very end, where it again has already slowed down and the hitbox is no longer active.
Wow, that's just a bad hitbox then. If during the thrust the hitbox ends like halfway through the thrust, you've got a fucking bad hitbox for a weapon. He hit the enemy, bro. Yeah, he hit it. Let the damage go through.
This could be a failure on the hitbox of the sword or the enemy.
And life goes on. Wow.
Here he just missed.
Dude, if we can't hit an enemy that's rubbing up against us in melee range, then we got a fucking problem with hitboxes, man. We got a fucking problem, right? If you can't hit an enemy because their body like bubble box that keeps you from phasing into them is too big to hit them, we got a problem.
This attack has a very low range, and especially on stairs often misses unless you get very, very close.
This is one of those things where it's one of those things where you have to try to account for like problems that are going to be in the game. So like if the like detection, or if like the range of how close you can get to the center of an enemy, like if the what would be the good way to put this? If the let's just put it this way: if the radius of an enemy is pushed too far out, where you cannot physically reach the enemy with certain weapons, that's bad, because that means certain weapons are not going to be used against them because, you know, you've made it where they just will not work, right? The way to fix that is to reduce the radius, right? And all these games have this problem, right? This isn't just strictly a DS2 issue. But when you're right on top of an enemy, it is one of those things where it just looks retarded. When you're trying to hit an enemy, you cannot physically get closer to them, and you still can't hit them.
PS3 addressed this by making the weapon hitboxes more generous, but as we saw earlier, this also leads to phantom hits where the weapon clearly went past the target, which can be annoying in PvP.
At least it's consistent, though.
Results in the blade pass.
Here it looks to me like he aimed too much to the left and just missed the second enemy.
Just missed the second enemy. They're on top of each other. One's fading away and one's right there that did not get hit. It's one of those things, too. It's hard to see this clip, too.
Same here.
From Software games can have moments where things don't go quite as planned.
I can't explain this one though, and neither can I reproduce it. So now let us...
Wow, he was just like, I can't figure out how to counter this. Lol, let's move on. LeMayo the rapier miss.
Move on to a topic that I can explain. Grab hitboxes and getting teleported into the grab animation. I was not even close to his hand and got teleported several feet.
His grab is utter move manages to drag you up to and including several meters. Many will try to
Getting teleported into the grab animation if the grab attack hits you happens in every Souls game.
What the fuck was this gaping dragon clip?
Into the grab animation if the grab attack hits you happens in every Souls game.
Was
Animation if the
arm?
grab attack hits you happens in every Souls game.
I can't even tell if this clip is natural or not. It looks like we just clipped animations there. I'm gonna give him the Iron Golem one. That has happened to me a number of times. Yeah, I know the Iron Golem has like some issues with that. I think it's one of those things. If you don't roll away from, like, if you, I've found a pretty consistent way to deal with it by rolling through his legs, like away from where the grab would be. That's worked pretty well for me in the past, but at the same time, it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, these are definitely issues. But him saying it's happened throughout the series is not a defense of Dark Souls 2 again. This is just a Dark Souls 2 did not improve on what the other games had problems with. Wow, I didn't even know Crystal Sage had a grab.
There are many even worse teleport grabs of Dancer on YouTube.
Oh, this is one of the things he's going to say, oh, wait, there are even worse grabs of these DS1 and DS3 bosses on YouTube. You mean like all the fucking videos on Dark Souls 2? Yes, bad grabs happen throughout the series. Dark Souls 2 is not immune to this either. Again, it's that thing where let's attack other games to make Dark Souls 2 look better. It's like you're just proving all the games have the problem. That's it. You're not defending your game by doing this. Whoa, wait, Crystal Sage has a grab? Yeah, it's like I had no idea Crystal Sage had a grab.
I wasn't even close to his arm and got teleported into the grab.
The hitbox on the hilt is absolutely stupid.
I mean, this is the Elan, like, grab as well. Like, when you are behind the thrust attack, you should not be thrust into it. I think you could make an argument if you took a little bit of damage from that. But being, like, clipped into the thrust is absolutely fucking stupid, right? There's no way to defend that. Right? The other hitboxes are just too big. This one is too big, and it looks ridiculous. Right? Now, the other ones do look ridiculous, too. But this is, again, you're not defending Dark Souls 2 by pointing out that they all have hitbox problems.
In every clip you can see him getting stabbed straight through his legs. Now, it does look inflated, but compared to grab attacks in the rest of the series, it's not bad.
It's not bad. As we see people, tons of clips in Mahler's videos of people getting hit from behind the fucking hilt. Again, this is one of those things that I've noticed. A lot of the clips in DS2 that he shows are clips of him showing the hitbox of one thing or the other. He rarely shows hitboxes of both things happening at the same time, right? So it makes me wonder if there actually is a system in Dark Souls 2 where the hitboxes shift when the player is nearby, right? Like the player's hitbox gets bigger for taking damage or some shit. Because he's not showed a lot of clips of the player in Dark Souls 2 dodging an attack with the hitboxes showing, right? Like he's shown a lot of clips of hitboxes of boss attacks when the player is clearly out of range. He's shown a lot of attacks with the player being nearby, but not having the player hitboxes visible, right? So it makes me wonder if there is something that goes on with the hitbox of the player when an attack gets within a certain range of them, right? It makes me wonder about that because he's had a suspicious amount of clips that are not recreations of what Mahler shows, where it's a player and an enemy in close proximity to a hitbox, right? Domo's avoided that for a lot of his clips, and it's made me very suspicious, right? Because I don't know if he knows something that we don't, or if there actually is a hitbox sort of shift that happens where the player hitbox gets bigger so an attack can go through. And given how cheaply you can get tagged by different types of damage and different types of bullshit things that kill you in Dark Souls 2, I would not put it past the developers to have the player hitbox randomly grow whenever an enemy attacks you. I would not actually put that past them. And it's a weird thing I've noticed with a lot of his clips.
It's not as tight as the one from Pursuer.
It's not as tight as one from Pursuer. You mean the one that people have been grabbed on? And again, this is one of those things where, does this come down as a hitbox issue or an ADP issue? Either way, Dark Souls 2 has a unique issue that the other ones don't have because of that, right? Adding ADP puts in a lot of problems.
But it is a lot tighter than Curse-Rotted Greatwood.
Well, this is the thing. This is also the thing where when you make bigger enemies, you have to make more unique and different hitboxes, right? Like the Pursuer hitbox is going to be a lot smaller because the model's a lot smaller. This model's a lot bigger, right? And it's one of those things where like making bosses that are very different in shape and size is part of the reason that hitboxes are so tough to get right a lot of the time. I don't know why he rolled with it.
Crystal Sage is about the same size. Iron Golem has a massively inflated grab hitbox. And so does Gaping Dragon.
It's one of those weird things, right, where the hitboxes don't match up with the clips he showed of this, right? It looks like Gaping Dragon in the other clips he showed just teleports you into the grab without the grab actually coming down. This is that weird thing where his footage of the hitboxes is inconsistent with what actually happens, right? So it makes me think something happens during the process with the player's hitbox and the hitboxes of the attacks. It's one of those things where it's weird how he doesn't show like the actual process of the player hitbox mixed in with these hitboxes, right? It's very strange that he doesn't show those two things working in the situation. He tends to show one or the other and rarely shows both of them working at the same time, right? It makes me wonder if there's something there that's either been tweaked in the different games or that he personally has tweaked, right? Because again, because he's showing all these cheats and stuff, and because we've seen him cheat things in, it makes me suspicious of what he's actually doing, right? Because he's already shown several clips that he has just blatantly misinterpreted things for the sake of his own argument, right? He should just keep the hitboxes on for every clip. Makes no sense to have the HUD off and the hitboxes too. Yeah, well, just like show some consistency. Have the hitboxes for everything on during particular attacks.
And for some reason this is also a grab hitbox.
Easy contender for the worst because it
He said this is also a grab hitbox, and it's like, we didn't see you get grabbed.
happens so many times per battle.
He always dodges to the left into the attack, instead of just dodging away.
There will be an absolute
Hit his head.
hitbox failures in a
Hit his leg.
I'm glad these points are just like very serious, just like, oh, it touched him briefly. And again, this is part of the problem with ADP. This is not a defense of Dark Souls in the way that he thinks it is. This is a problem where it either comes back to the hitboxes being wonky or it comes back to ADP being a thing that fucks with your iframes. Both of these things are bad.
Level throughout the game. Several interact.
It's a clearly visible shockwave, which is something every dragon has on their stomp attacks.
Offers a little moment of being
It's another clearly visible shockwave.
and that honestly
Well, this is one thing too, is like the clips that he's showing as sort of like counters to those like the Giant Lord one, right? Dark Souls 2 has enemies that track you obsessively, oftentimes. So it's one of those things where you figure you have to sort of dodge into stuff because you can't. It's rarely can you dodge out of it, right? I think Alon's one of those exceptions. Like enemies that have sort of thrust moves are exceptions to that. But when you have an attack that's a big slam on top of an AOE, it's one of those things where the hitboxes get kind of complicated to like dodge through.
and that honestly
It hit his foot.
every game has this.
Again his foot.
Is that this game has far
Foot.
Dude, like if you're gonna keep saying that again, this is one thing. If you're gonna keep showing all this shit where we barely get tagged in our foot in the middle of a roll with a giant enemy where we can't see shit, why don't you fucking show the hitboxes of both the boss and the fucking player at the same time? Why do you not show both of them, Domo? Why don't you show both of them? You clearly have the capacity to. You can clearly show both of them at the same time. We've seen a few clips where you show an enemy just standing there and the player right next to them doing something. Why don't you show these grabs and let's see behind the curtain what actually fucking happens in Dark Souls 2? Why don't you do that? Why don't you show that? Why do you suspiciously not show any of that shit and just say, oh, he just tagged them. He just tagged them. He touched their toe. They're dead. Why do you avoid showing the hitboxes when they should be working the most between the player and the weapon swing going through of the boss? Why do you refuse to show those? It's strange.
Honestly, I had to cut half of
The hitbox is like a few inch larger than the model.
the clips that you're seeing for this section. The fact that I have way too many.
Is he really acting surprised why it hurts if a giant steps on him?
Well, again, this is one of those things where it's like the giant's not stepping on you. Why would his sword attack also trigger damage from his feet? This is that weird thing where boss's movement has not damaged us consistently throughout this game or the rest of the series. Why should he assume that?
That show the exact same.
Foot.
Again, this fucker is just going to keep going. It barely tagged you at 0.1 frame of a second. You deserved it. Get good, get good, get good. Why don't you just get good with Dark Souls 2 already? Why can't you just play the game as niche as I fucking do?
And let's be fair, you know that if the hit
You can see the sword cut through him.
tight, then you would not be taking hits here.
Could be a bit tighter.
And that's sort of
Not any worse than any grab in DS1 was.
Again, you're just showing that the hitboxes are fucking weird. Every time you attack all the other games, you are just proving that you are a defensive prick trying to desperately defend the game that you love.
guarantee that the hitbox
Hit his foot again. What we have learned so far is that Mauler never pays any attention to clearly visible shockwaves or if his legs get hit towards the end of a roll.
Why do all these enemies have a damn shockwave then? Why do all of them have some damn shockwave added to a weapon swing?
He constantly accuses accurate and tight hitboxes of being broken just because he does not pay any attention to what is actually happening, so here is a small demonstration of just how tight Velstad's swing is. I can dodge below it with various attacks, despite what Mauler falsely claims it is not a hitbox issue, but actually he just suffers from skill issues and blames the game for his...
This is just infuriating. This is just one of those infuriating things where just complaining skill issue just over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. This will be really fun when we play Dark Souls 2 and then we play the game like the other games and we do just fine because the game is very blitzable when you understand where the bullshit is. This will be very fun when we get to our playthrough of it. I truly do hope that Domo gets paid to spoil a game at every turn that was made by 30-plus-year-old adults.
His own mistakes.
Well, this is also one of those things, too, where he's using movesets that make him go lower than the hitbox of the weapon. You're inherently not creating the same type of clip that Mauler is showing. You are inherently creating different clips to counter his arguments when you are not playing the game the same way he is. That's the whole fucking point of comparing evidence. It needs to be the same, or at least as similar as you can recreate it. Playing the game differently and then saying that all the problems that that person found are invalid is just proving that you are not paying attention to what he's fucking doing. You're looking for gotchas instead of looking at what's actually going on.
Made rather jaggedly.
Another clip of him getting hit in his leg.
He didn't get hit in the leg, you fucking idiot!
Just rushed.
It's not great that she has such a big hitbox on her hand, but similar issues that lead to jank exist again in every Souls game. Here's a few more examples of bosses with hitboxes on their hands or shoulders.
Oh my god, the deflecting is so annoying.
Another attack that is his leg.
We can't even see. This isn't. My clip is in 1080p. I can't fucking see it because of how blurry this shit is. Motherfucker. It's not great, but other games do it too.
No. During your time with the game,
Shockwave.
just be those hitbox errors.
That one is a bit too large.
Laugh at.
Looks like he decided to get eaten. Why not roll away?
This is one thing where it feels like Domo doesn't play the game like Eddie. Sorry, I'm a little saucy. It's one of those things where Domo doesn't feel like... Well, it feels like Domo doesn't play the game like other players do. Like, most players dodge into an attack because you don't want to have your hitbox lingering in the attack of... You don't want to have your iframes go out, like, dissipate while you're in an attack. Like, you don't want to follow an attack because that increases your risk of getting tagged, right? So most people dodge into attacks as opposed to with them, right? That's pretty standard Souls knowledge, right? Now, some of these dodges are poor on Mauler's part, I will say that. You know, but dodging into Ava can work sometimes. But again, it comes back to that weird mix of hitbox issues with ADP issues. And again, this is part of the thing with a lot of these clips from Mauler is I'm not sure exactly how much of this is done with ADP set at an appropriate level, or how much of this is just base game ADP, no tweaking it, just playing the game normally, right? This is one of those things where I think Mahler really should have defined how bad the hitboxes could be by going through a run where he had like max ADP versus base ADP or something. You know, that would show some differences. Rolling away is rarely ever the right solution, bro, especially not with grabs. Yeah.
You personally react to things.
One of the few ones in his video that actually is bad.
Try hit me.
There is like an inch between the sword and his foot. It is.
Bro, you can't keep just saying foot, 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 foot. At that point, you are admitting that the entire roll hitbox is fucked. If the roll is completely fucked, then how do we fix it? Oh, with the system Dark Souls 2 used to fix the problem that didn't need to be there in the fucking first place. While some of these issues could be hitboxes and some of these could be ADP, we don't fucking know. One, because you won't fucking show any clip where you have the actual hitboxes and the actual fucking boss attacks going through. Why don't you show some clips of how the hitboxes of the player work with the hitboxes of the enemy attacks in Dark Souls 2 to defend Dark Souls 2? How about you actually defend your fucking game? This is one of those things where someone has an addiction problem, and instead of like saying that they've been doing better or something, or they've been doing less of that addiction, they instead point at other people at Alcoholics Anonymous and say, no, you guys have been just as bad as me. It's like, you're not fucking defending yourself. You're just being a prick and starting a war for no fucking reason. Defend your game.
Again.
And this is one thing too. If you have to attack all these other games to defend your game, then your game might not be that defensible as you think.
Not hard to show even worse examples from the other games.
Shockwave. Look at that. I think at this point we've seen more DS3 and DS1 clips than DS2 clips. I kind of agree. Like, what the hell is that? Look at that little clip where he gets, like, stabbed by nothing. Getting stabbed by nothing. That's fucking terrible, especially for such a tiny weapon.
That hollow was swinging a bandit knife, so let us take a look at how the hitboxes for that weapon were implemented in the Souls games.
Hey look, I'm gonna nitpick this.
DS3 once again with the most inflated hitboxes, and enemies with that weapon do swing the same hitboxes around.
This is one thing you may have noticed, that we've had a large consistency with Dark Souls 3 hitboxes, where they're all a little bloated. They're all a little bigger, whereas in Dark Souls 2 you have random inconsistencies pop up.
Do I have to spell it out? LEGS.
LEGS? Legs? Oh. I thought he was actually going for an acronym there, something smart, instead of just going foot over and fucking over and fucking over and fucking over. Now this is one thing, like some of these clips from Dark Souls 2, some of these clips from Mahler's videos are just them dodging poorly, right? That actually is like a skill issue, I will say. Right? Like, he should be waiting for that attack to go through before he dodges. You know, like, there are several clips in here where Mahler did kind of screw up with some of the clips he showed. But again, comes back to that issue where we don't know the ADP numbers for each of these characters at these respective points. So the whole argument becomes really fucking muddy whenever we have to account hitboxes of enemies, hitboxes of player, and stat that they may or may not have leveled up to different points. You know, I mean, at the baseline, Dark Souls 2 is messier because it has a stat that affects iframes, which affects hitboxes. Right? So at the baseline, Dark Souls 2 has a problem. Again, I'm talking about Dark Souls 2 and that game compared to the others.
Do I have to spell it out? LEGS. Does he not know what shockwaves are?
Why are there so many damn shockwaves?
We've covered on this one topic. The hitboxes are...
The sword went through his head.
The game really does knock it
The leg was again very close to the sword.
when it comes to the worst hitbox.
Looks to me like the ogre hit his legs.
What it's doing. Constructed hitboxes in the game. Basically a cavalcade.
Now, the mimic hitboxes you cannot fucking defend. Alright, the mimic hitboxes are a significant issue. They are a significant hitbox issue that is undefendable. Alright? Unless you are directly in front of the mimic, you should not be hit by its grab attack. There is no fucking reasoning for that hitbox to be as shitty as it is. The hitbox should be right in front of the mimic's physical form. It should be big enough to encompass a small cone effect directly in front of the mimic box. If it expands beyond it, you have made a bad hitbox that is blatantly unfair for no fucking reason. Let's watch him make up some reason to defend it.
Earlier I've shown the iron golem that can grab you while you were behind him. So here is an example from DS3 that has the same spherical grab hitbox as the DS2 mimic. The DS3 mimic also has a grab hitbox on the whole chest. I couldn't reproduce the even worse ones I've seen on YouTube and Reddit, but here is a few bad ones from my attempts.
Why'd you walk into it? Are you noticing something funny here? During these mimic clips, he's walking directly into the hitbox each time. Like, he's not reacting the way a player would, where they try to dodge or get an attack in or something. He's just walking into the hitbox. Let's watch, shall we?
The DS3 mimic also...
I'm going to turn him off. I don't want to deal with his AI voice for a minute. Need a break. He's actually trying to downplay the DS2 mimic grab. It's like, look, these enemies have hitboxes that are a little too big for their grabs and don't make sense. It's like, yeah, the mimics are way worse because that grab will usually fucking kill you. The mimic grabs of Dark Souls 2 are absurd, especially given the shit. All right, now here's what I wanted to show, right? He's walking towards the enemy as it's doing a grab attack. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you putting yourself in harm's way? Intentionally. You're not even dodging. Again, walking towards the mimic during its grab. Why do you want to do that? It seems like you're purposely trying to get caught by the fucking thing that other people criticize in Dark Souls 2. You know what? I'm going to go try that grab in DS3. I have to see. Again, walking towards the mimic and toward its grab. Just all the same shit. I'm going to walk into the trap this time to make it look as bad as possible. Ugh. Look at him turn towards it at the last second to get caught.
An interesting spot.
That is again not a bad hitbox just because he pays no attention to his legs.
Again, this is one of those things where a lot of these clips, in the heat of the moment, look like a bad hitbox, but when you peel back the layers, it might actually be an ADP issue. So again, while some of these clips are, I think, sort of what would be the best phrase for this? Some of these clips would be better off talking about ADP as opposed to hitboxes, right? But again, since Domo's not going through the entire series, and he's not showing the entire context of Mahler's clips, he's just kind of randomly throwing them in. I can't remember off the top of my head if this is if these clips are from a talk about hitboxes or about ADP or about a mix of the two. So I don't really know. This is one reason why I like live reactions, because you can see things in real time as opposed to these edited clips where he's just throwing in clips and then responding to them.
What? But the third one hit me.
He even showed a slow-mo of the slap. Fume Knight has two different thrust attacks. For one, he lets his arm hang down passively, and as expected there is no hitbox active. For the other, he actively slaps back with his hand, and as expected there is a hitbox on his fist.
Wait, so what was the counter to Fortia's thing?
Not a bad hitbox just because he pays no attention to his legs.
Okay, that should absolutely not be a... Why would there be a hitbox on an arm that doesn't have a weapon during this attack? That makes no sense.
What? But the third one hit me.
He even showed a slow-mo of the slap. Fume Knight has two different thrust attacks. For one, he lets his arm hang down passively, and as expected there is no hitbox active. For the other, he actively slaps back with his hand, and as expected there is a hitbox on his fist.
And as expected, there's a hitbox on his fist. Why the hell would there be a hitbox on his fist when there's no fucking weapon there? You were just making shit up to make this look better than what Mahler brought up. You were just making shit up. Just any fucking thing to defend your sacred game, isn't it? Just anything.
DP. However, nothing in the game makes this clear whatsoever. The description for agility is boosts ease of evasion and other actions. For example, at 85 agility your character will have 5 iframes, while at 116 agility your character will then have 16 iframes. This is imperative information to a new player, and the game is almost purposefully obfuscating the information. So tying it to a stat meant that once players understand that, which they apparently weren't meant to.
If rolling feels hard, and there is a stat that tells you that it makes rolling easier, simply level up that stat until rolling feels easy.
I like how his solution to this problem is just get good with the problem. Just play the game the devs intended. It's like, do you understand the point Mahler's fucking making, you idiot? Do you actually fucking understand? Do you actually listen to what Mahler says, or do you just get red haze over your eyes as someone criticizes your beloved sacred cow? Did you understand what Mahler was fucking saying about this? It is a stat that fundamentally alters the way your dodging works. Not like any of the other games, not like the games that came before it. You are now required to level a stat to get your ADP high enough to get the normal iframes you get in the other games at the baseline. And how is boost evasion and other actions supposed to tell you that the roll is fucked up compared to the previous games? How is that supposed to tell you anything specifically? Okay, tested it out. He was right. You can get grabbed when you're behind the DS3 chick. Yeah. That is bad. That is bad. But again, you're not really defending Dark Souls 2 by saying all the games are shit with this stuff.
You really do not need to be an intellectual gamer in order to figure this out.
You don't have to be an intellectual gamer to figure this out. What, you mean like the millions of players that played Dark Souls 2 and didn't like this system because it's not intuitive at all? Because all the other games don't have you do this fucking thing? Tell me, why is it that none of the other FromSoft games that are in this style have a stat that increases your dodge chances? Tell me why, Domo. Tell me why all the other games are not as intellectually engaging as Dark Souls 2 is. Tell me why. And tell me why all the other games have grown more complicated as time's gone on, but they decided not to do this anymore. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people dislike this shit? It's because it's inconsistent. It's because it has no bearing on what came before. It's a completely different system for how your dodge functions. Why should we dump a stat into the game and then have players force levels into that to make their ADP work at the baseline that the other games already have? Better yet, why don't they just tell us that? Better yet, why don't they just take the fucker out and just not have this changed? It's another change from the previous games that is solely there to make the game harder. There is no other logic for changing the way iframes work than to make the game fucking harder by any means necessary. Because the developers of Dark Souls 2 were fucking raisin brains who only knew how to make difficulty by making things as unfucking fair as possible. And even then, a few good things actually squeaked out of it.
This is not rocket science. It's really not deliberately obfuscated.
Obfuscated? Wow. AI voice failing him right there. But it is one of those things where it's like, have you considered the fact that not all players know what this fucker is? Like, how are you supposed to know that it affects your role? And better yet, how are you supposed to know that your role is already fucked and you need to fix it using ADP? It says it boosts evasion and other actions. The game doesn't tell you that your role is already fucked from the get-go. The game does not tell you that. You have to find that out by getting fucked. Talk about fairness, right? Hard but fair, hard but fair, hard but fair. This series has fallen off a cliff with that in recent years.
Based on all the clips where he got hit in his legs, we can see that he played a lot with base ADP, so he just likes to blame the game for the fact that he just ignored a new stat completely and did not read the in-game description at first.
What even is this clip? I can't tell what he's fucking doing.
Iframes are fundamentally more important than literally any other statistic. Health, stamina, dexterity, and strength pale in value compared to iframes in its early levels, and
in so many of his clips he has a shield on his back that he never uses. Tanks do not need to focus on agility, as their primary form of preventing damage is blocking. They need to level up their equip load in order to wear heavy armor and a great shield.
I like how he's completely missing Mahler's argument again, just completely making up his own counter to what Mahler's fucking saying. It's like, dude, can you watch the clips you're actually reacting to, please? I'm starting to notice that the DS2 player character's legs are just shitty. He dies easily from fall damage, gets hit in the legs often. Yeah, just there's never a leg day in a Drang Lake, apparently. Everyone's an arm bro.
iframes are fundamentally more important than literally any other statistic. Health, stamina, dexterity, and strength pale in value compared to iframes in its early levels, and
In so many
I like how he didn't let Mahler finish his point either. He's just saying, this is Mahler talking about iframes being incredibly important for every build, and I'm going to respond to it by saying, shield builds don't need iframes. The fuck does that have to do with the ADP discussion? Hey look, this one build doesn't need it. They could certainly fucking use it. Especially when you get ganked by tons of enemies. Hey Domo, why don't you show a clip of you with a shield after you're dealing with 7 different enemies at once? Let's see how that goes. Let's see how that goes. Block through all of their shit. And make the encounter super easy. Do it. Show it. Let's fucking go. Caught your stupid ass, Domo. I got this one. It could be that the shield boosts stamina regen, you fucking idiot. That's true. It is the stamina regen one. Fuck you, Domo. Good catch, sheep.
many of his clips he has a shield on his back that he never uses. Tanks do not need to focus on agility, as their primary form of preventing damage is blocking. They need to level up their equip load in order to wear heavy armor and a great shield. Mages also do not need to care about ADP.
Mages don't need to care about ADP. The fuck are you talking about?
They get enough iframes by leveling up their attunement. Their primary way of preventing damage is keeping a distance, so rolling is often not even needed. He seems to think that only one type of build exists in Souls games, but then he also complains that ADP limits your builds even though only one of 3 basic RPG archetypes requires it. Tanks need...
What the fuck are you talking about, Domo? The problem is that ADP affects everybody. It's a cheap way to get your iframes back to the baseline that the other games had, and it's a really stupid way to get extra iframes when we shouldn't fucking have them. There should be a consistent iframe based on your equip load. That's why all the other fucking games did it, because it worked well with every build no matter what. It was an option for every build to tap into if they wanted to use it. And this is one of those things too. This is part of the problem with Dark Souls 2 is that a lot of Soul Level 1 runs get fucked because of the ADP limitations, right? You have to be absurdly aware of where the hitboxes are to be able to level 1 Dark Souls 2. Right? And it's one of those things where it's not even really a skill issue, or not, it's not even really about the skill ceiling being higher for like a Soul Level 1 run in Dark Souls 2. It's just the game has fucked the system that all the other games have. Attunement does boost your agility instead of ADP, but you still fucking need it. You know grab still exists, right? Yeah. Well, this is one of those things I'd be curious to say, so if a build... How is a build normally supposed to deal with mimics? Are they just supposed to hoard all thrown items and then awkwardly try to aim them at the target to trigger the mimic? Does every build have to have a bow to trigger a mimic so that they don't get hit by the hitbox? Domo, how do you want players to play the game? Because I feel like you're one of those people that wants people to play the games very specifically.
To level up their equip load as their secondary stat. Mages need to level up their spell slots and casting speed.
What the fuck was that AI doing?
Agile rogue glass cannons need to level up their agility in order to have easier rolls.
You know the whole point of a glass cannon is to be a cannon, right? Which means you're going to dump points into probably stamina and strength of some kind. We shouldn't have to dump spell... See, this is the problem, right? See, this is the biggest problem. If Dark Souls 2 came first, mechanically, and all the other games came afterward, you could make a point that they thought ADP was a good idea. A lot of people didn't like it, how inconsistent it made certain builds. And so they just made it where, okay, we'll take that out. Let's make all the other games without ADP and just give a balanced amount of iframes depending on equip load, right? That would be one thing. But because Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 had systems in place where iframes were consistent based on equip load, right? And were balanced according to equip load, right? If you're faster, you get less iframes because you're faster. You can do more shit when you're faster, right? Your movement is not as impaired as a fat roll, right? Fat rolls get more because they're a lot slower, which means they can do them less, right? They were inherently balanced in the other games. In Dark Souls 2, they're just not balanced at all. That's how I deal with the mimic that gives you the Staff of Wisdom and Scholar. Didn't enjoy that one in such a cramped space, yeah.
He also vastly overestimates the importance of high agility because he is just really bad at dodging.
He's just really bad at dodging. It's like, yeah, some of these clips weren't that great for dodging, but it is also a thing where if all these clips are fucked because of ADP, how many people know about ADP? The fact that so many people did not know about ADP for a long time shows you the problem, right? Just because people have done digging to... Like, if you have to dig into the files to see what they actually do, then you've got a fucking problem on your hands with telegraphing things to a player. If so many people are going to miss this because the game doesn't tell you it, that is a problem. Ben and Garrus really loved the mimics. They moved when he played at Scholar, haha. That's the thing. I remember a lot of the mimics being just gone in Scholar for some reason. I don't really know why. I remember a lot of the mimics, I was looking forward to dealing with them because some of them dropped some good stuff in the base game. And then just a lot of them just were not fucking there, like at all. Like, I don't remember how many mimics were actually in the base game when I went through Scholar, but it was a lot less.
He constantly dodges to the sword side of enemies. He dodges into the attacks instead of away from them.
Dodges into the attacks instead of away from them. What, like every fucking other strategy in every other fucking game that fucking works with consistent iframes? Again, this is that thing where people like how you have to play differently with Dark Souls 2, and that's why they think Dark Souls 2 is the best. That's one of those reasons where it plays differently from the other games. That's why we like it so much. It's like, do you understand that there are a lot of problems, though? It is a sequel to Dark Souls. It should thematically work similarly in a large aspect. So much stuff is fucked up in Dark Souls 2 by comparison to Dark Souls 1. Because it's such a different game. It's not a real... like, it's half a sequel to Dark Souls and half a sequel to Demon fucking Souls. And there's another little blurb of it that's just something completely different because of all the different shit they've added. He doesn't play like a sissy and rolls in for the best chance at counterattacks, yeah. Seems most of the mimics are late game in Scholar. Can only really think of the one in Brightstone Cove and Earthen Peak as early game ones. Yeah, again, I need to play Scholar more. I've only played through it once. So I don't remember where all the mimics are.
Low agility works perfectly fine if you just play a bit smarter and dodge away from attacks.
Again, you have to play the game very differently from the other ones, even though it's a sequel to a game that plays very similarly to its predecessor.
Or even just walk away.
Dark Souls 1 offers barely any poor hitboxes by comparison to the embarrassment of Dark Souls 2.
Throughout the video I showed so many bad ones from DS1 already. It has way less bosses than DS2, but an higher amount of bosses with broken hitboxes.
And Dark Souls 3 offers ones that are downright satisfying to watch.
The hitboxes in DS3 are only known to be pixel perfect because it has such generous rolls, but if you want to find broken hitboxes there are plenty in this game as well. I've only shown...
I like how his criticisms of the other games are perfectly in line with Dark Souls 2 as well. And so it's one of those things where every time he tries to counter Mahler's arguments of the other games being better at this, he inadvertently just admits that Dark Souls 2 hitboxes are just as bad as the other games by virtue of the footage he has shown in his own videos. Like, when he shows the hitboxes, he's shown them to be just as bad as the other games by his own metric. If you play with low agility, you have to play a lot more cumbersome-like. Trust me on that. That one got me too, Andrew Low. I was surprised and died in that one grab. Oh, what was the one that got me in the one in New Game Plus that replaces the chest with the rusted coins and Majula? Yeah.
Shown a handful of the bad ones throughout this video. So please enjoy a minute of showcasing...
Here are all the bad ones from the other games that are also present in Dark Souls 2, but completely forget about that. Dark Souls 2, best game.
3 different attacks of Nameless King that all annoyed me a lot.
Why does this annoy you but not Dark Souls 2? You greedy fucker. Hey look, it's the Nameless King slap, just like the Fume Knight slap. He's slapping you with his hands. Hey look, head. Head. Legs. Just make shit up and copy him. Yeah, and Andrew, that's a really good point. You can't really use DS3 to defend DS2. That just means the A team didn't fix the problems. Yeah. I mean, it also shows that the B team didn't fix the problems either if they existed in Dark Souls 1. This is not a good thing for the franchise overall. You're basically just shitting on the entire trilogy instead of just defending Dark Souls 2. Best way I can describe this is being a kid who gets caught being a douche while his friends, Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, get away with it. Like, no, Jimmy, we're talking about you, not Carl and John. Yeah.
He showed some clips of people ducking below or jumping above attacks in DS3, so the last part of this video will be just me doing the same.
Why do you hide your FUD? I was gonna get really mad. I fucked that up. I was gonna say, why do you hide your HUD, you fucker? But it came out, how do you hide your FUD? But seriously, why do you hide your HUD so often during these clips? Don't you want to show that you're not taking damage? Hmm. The amount of times he goes over to DS3 and DS1 rather than providing solutions, proper intuitive ways to counter is insane. Yeah. A lot of his like arguments against the problems with DS2 that people have is just you're playing the game wrong, it's a skill issue, and why don't you just play the game the same weird way that I do? Play the game like it's not a Souls game and you'll be fine. You know? Stop hiding the HUD. I know your stamina is rather empty at this point or overtuned or at like 99. Show the fucking HUD, man. Yeah.
So to summarize, the vast majority of hitbox complaints he had were actually just him getting hit in his legs or him standing in clearly visible shockwaves and not paying any attention to what is actually happening. He just falsely blames hitboxes of being broken instead of just learning to dodge better.
Hey, that should have been a head. That should have been a head right there.
He just falsely blames hitboxes of being broken instead of just...
Head. Why no head there? Why no head there? DS2 bad. Why no head there? DS2 bad. I mean, I can criticize Dark Souls 1. It's very slow, and I don't get as much enjoyment gameplay-wise from it, but objectively the mechanics are better in it. Subjectively, I prefer DS2 even with the faults. Well, that's the thing. Dark Souls 2 is one of those games that is intrinsically... I've said this a lot of different ways, but the basic thing with the Souls trilogy is that, or with the Dark Souls trilogy, is that Dark Souls 1 has a nuanced level of difficulty because the encounters are varied in the way they're difficult, right? In Dark Souls 3, that is also very similar, where the difficulty is arranged in different ways. The difficulty in Dark Souls 2 is often very one-note, and once you understand how one-note it is, you can easily deal with it, right? So in a sense, the skill ceiling in Dark Souls 2 is way lower than others once you understand the bullshit. Right? Once you understand where the bullshit is, it is so easy to blitz the game. And we're going to prove that when we go through the Dark Souls trilogy and play them with the same build across all 3 games after this series is over. We are going to go through that shit, and it will be a really good evidenced sort of playthroughs of how each game does certain things well and how each game does certain things poorly. Hell nah, bro got hit from the head down to his chest and didn't get hit. Same here, Andrew. I massively prefer DS2's builds overall, but the mechanics of the base combat drags it down for me. Yeah. Well, this is part of the problem, too. Dark Souls 2 has so many ways to farm things with all the bonfire aesthetics that you can get to some absurd levels before you even get to the end game, right? Like, rotten boosting is a thing I've done a billion times, because it's super easy to get to. He gives an extra soul, because he's one of the special enemies. He's one of the 4 old ones, right? And he's super easy to get to. So once you beat the Rotten the first time, you can just bonfire ascetic him into oblivion, and get like 1,000,000 souls in no time. I've gotten to a point in DS2 where I just pop an effigy when I die solely so I can keep my cosmetics looking good. Yeah. DS3 is harder for me because I couldn't play Bloodborne, so the ramp up in your speed and the weapon skills hit me. And since I couldn't play Demon Souls, I wasn't used to having a mana bar. Yeah, well, that's one of the weird things about this series is how different things affect them in different ways, but they keep a sort of continuity of ideas. Not from Dark Souls 2. A lot of those ideas got cut off real quick, but yeah, it's one of those things where jumping from Dark Souls 2 to 3 is rough because of the difference in speed and the new mechanic rebalancing with the FP system.
Just learning to dodge better. There are a few bad hitboxes in this game, but as far as I can tell, not actually more than in the other Souls games. For every bad hitbox in DS2, I can show a similarly bad one in the other games.
Yeah, but the amount. Show the amount of bad hitboxes in Dark Souls 2. You tend to keep showing the exact same clips over and over and over, of the same enemies over and over and over, the same bosses over and over and over. Why don't you show every boss, every enemy, and just lay out all the fucking hitbox problems they could have? Take every single clip that Mahler used against Dark Souls 2 and try to flip it. Let's see how much you can get out of that.
For every bad grab in DS2, I can show a similarly bad grab in the other games as well. He just made it seem like the vast majority of hitboxes in this game are broken by constantly showing clips where he did in fact got hit. Or clips where the attack missed by a few inches, which would have hit him in a lot of cases in the other Souls games as well.
See, let's watch that one attack that just happened.
Attack
right?
missed by a few inches.
How did that attack? How did that attack not hit, but the other clips and Mahler's things hit? Right? This is not an ADP thing, right? You are fucking with your footage at this point, right? Because how did that one attack with this sword thrust, not damage you when you're not doing any ADP shit? When all the others got hit when they weren't even touching the blade.
Got hit.
All right, let's watch this next clip because I want to point this out, right?
Or clips.
All right, let's go through this. All right, watch this, right? He's not doing any dodges. That blade is like 2 inches above his head when it comes in here before he starts doing this little shit, right? Why does this attack give you iframes or whatever that fucks with this hitbox when dodging away from the weapon doesn't give you iframes? Why is that? It's just strange, isn't it? It's just strange how there's a lot of inconsistencies between what one person's footage from several different people, and Mahler's footage showed versus what he does with this one character with these weapons, right? Notice he uses these weapons a lot. He's used these things several times to show hitboxes being good, right? Why don't you show different builds, different weapons, different attack styles, different types of things? Seems odd. DS2 does have the best fashion souls in this series. I love DS3, but I almost wish they didn't go this route because of how things are now. Yeah. DS2 has phenomenal fashion, man. It's criminal that most of it didn't carry over. I don't believe that a weapon skill serves better iframes and dodging than the roll. Yeah. It's just like, why? Like, why? Again, it's one of those things, if iframes were consistent, then the hitboxes would be consistent with the other games, but because iframes are not consistent because of different things that affect them, we have this issue where we can't tell if it's a hitbox issue or if it's an iframe issue. So you've got this random muddy area for Dark Souls 2 that none of the other games have. That's part of the reason why people look down on Dark Souls 2, and part of the reason why people favor Dark Souls 2 is because people look down on it because they think it's less, they think it's not as good as the other ones because of the iframe fuckery. And the hitboxes, they can't really tell if that's an iframe issue or a hitbox issue, or a mixture of the two, right? Or maybe there's another mechanic that fucks with it. People that love Dark Souls 2 think it's a higher skill ceiling when it's really not. It's just, you have to level up more shit so that you can play the game the way you play the other ones. All right. And that's a good point. He literally has cheats, respawn all the bosses, and go through them with different bosses. Yeah.
Which would have hit him in a lot of cases in the other Souls games as well. He also presented getting teleported into grab attacks as an issue that's unique to DS2, even though it happens in every Souls game, and in other videos I've showed the same happening in Elden Ring as well. So all in all, he was...
I like how he says... Oh, man. Let's not talk about Elden Ring. I got big problems with Elden Ring. Elden Ring might be a game that I actively hate more than Dark Souls 2, as I've played it more. I actively dislike Elden Ring more than Dark Souls 2 at this point.
Confidently talking as if he is an expert on Souls mechanics, even though he has clearly no idea what he is actually talking about.
You know, the personal attacks don't really help your argument the entire time when all you keep going is skill issue, skill issue, skill issue, skill issue, skill issue, skill issue, get good, get good, get good, get good, play the game differently, play the game differently, play the game differently. Telling people to play the game with fucked mechanics for things that were consistent in other games is not a good way for you to bring people to your side. You just seem like an asshole. And you pretty much have proven you're an asshole at this point.
Which seems to be...
Especially when you get blatant shit wrong, when you go for the nitpicky shit, and then you end up getting blatant basic things wrong, like with the shield. During that one clip. I forget where it is. Where is it? Yeah, like right there, right? Like he's got that shield on, and you completely forgot that that's the stamina shield. It makes me think you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Domo.
Be a common theme in all his videos about DS2.
This is one thing too. Why are you using a weapon that purposely lowers your hitboxes lower than where the weapon strikes will normally be? Why don't you use other fucking weapons instead of the one set of weapons that move you around a lot to get around the hitboxes? Why don't you use basic weapons, not niche ones? Why do you play the game in such a weird fucking way to prove your point? It's sad. The only guy I commonly watch who seems to be fair to the game is you. I try. I mean, I get things wrong here and there. And my Dark Souls 2 commentary, while I enjoyed making it, and I think that I got a lot of good points in there, there were several mistakes in there. But it is one of those things where if we can't talk about the game on its own in isolation, when it comes to like what problems it has and what problems it should not have had given its history, of like the games that came before it. If we have to, we live in the age where in order to protect something, you have to drag something else down. And that's a fucking stupid ideology, right? Just point blank. It's fucking stupid that we have to defend our thing by dragging something else down. It's such a pathetic way of defending things. Why don't you just defend the game? I've actually thought about making a defense of Dark Souls 2 where I actually talk about the things in the game that I like, that I think are good, that I think are at least worthwhile or noteworthy in some way. I genuinely thought about doing that at some point. Man, look at you using the super niche weapons that move your body around so that your hitboxes don't line up with the enemy's hitboxes a lot of the time. Look at how good you are using niche weapons that negate the iframe fuckery. Again, he's just using the same fucking weapons over and over. Use a straight sword. Use a rapier. Use the Ultra Great Sword. Use another fucking weapon, the one that moves your body around in wonky ways, where the hitboxes aren't even going to touch you to begin with. You're not making a good case for yourself when you use the exact same weapons over and over and over, and it's very obvious that they move your character in weird ways by comparison to most other weapons. Let's speed this up. I don't want to sit here and just watch him doing the same hippie trippy shit over and over. He's like, look at these weapons that are great. Why don't you guys have these weapons at these points in the game? I'm waiting for him to talk at some point. You know what? I just realized all of this shit with these weapons is similar to having take all of his criticisms of hitboxes in Dark Souls 3 and now apply the dodge effect that comes with particular weapons in that game, like the Artorias spin around and jump, and the I forget which weapon it is where you do the slide, like you do the slide sort of dodge. Take all his criticisms of Dark Souls 3 and now use those weapons to dodge shit. You have now reached a level playing field where Dark Souls 3 is on the same level as Dark Souls 2 now. Where you use niche weapons to get out of the hitbox problems that are in the game. Man, imagine if we held you to the same standard with each game. Imagine if we did that. This is like if I used that one backflip ring in Dark Souls 1 to defend something with bad hitboxes. This is just sad. Yeah. I could defend it, but most of my defense would be subjective. The only thing I could really argue is their changes to New Game Plus. I feel make it better compared to every other game in the series since. New Game Plus and the other games I find boring since they're just doing the same things, just harder. The dagger backstep I think you're meaning. Yeah. I thought the New Game Plus in Dark Souls 2 was good in concept, but adding phantoms to areas and additional enemies was a turnoff, like a major one. Yeah, well, I agree that New Game Plus in Dark Souls 2 is more interesting than New Game Plus in the other games, for the most part, but it is one of those things where the phantoms are just, they're damage sponges, man. They have so much HP. Even when you know what you're doing, they have so much HP. Like, I think the ones in Hades Tower have like a solid, like, 8,000 hit points or something. Like, there's a lot of shit that comes with all those summons being everywhere now. This is the one thing. I want to watch this video through. Like, I don't want to... See, unlike him, I'm not going to skip over shit because I don't feel like it, right? I want to watch him all the way through and get all the context. I just really hope he says something because I'm really fucking bored of watching these clips over and over for the next, like, 3 minutes. He actually changed it up with some different weapons. Good on you, Domo. Use more average weapons. I mean, you're still using attacks that change where your hitbox would be, but at least you're using more normal-ish weapons than the niche ones that spin you around or flip you around or make you roll around or slide around. Then he went right back to him.
And honestly, as someone that likes to duck below attacks by attacking myself...
Oh, here we go, here we go. Let's back up, he's speaking again. He has spoken.
And honestly, as someone that likes to duck below attacks by attacking myself, I have to say that this works for more enemies and bosses in DS2 than in the other Souls games. People just falsely blame DS2 of having broken hitboxes, because many played with low agility and never paid any attention to their legs getting hit towards the end of a roll.
I like how his thing is just the same shit as before, where it's just like, people just aren't good because they didn't understand the very niche mechanic that is different from every other game in the series up to this point and afterwards. Like, why weren't they just smart enough just to see that this game is radically fucking designed differently? I just don't understand how all the other players that don't like Dark Souls 2 are so stupid. Is that Domo is the type of person who believes in the get good meme, and he believes that he is the one that has gotten good. You know, and everyone that criticizes Dark Souls 2 has not gotten good. Like, I really want to play Dark Souls 2 now just to go through this. Right? I cannot wait to go through Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 and play them with the same build to prove a lot of his points wrong. I cannot wait to do that. But we got to get through the rest of this series first. You know how goofy that sounds? Who actually pays attention to their legs when they roll, man? That's just corny. Well, it's also a thing, too. If my iframes are not fast enough to get through some attacks because of my ADP stat being weird, that's on the fault of the ADP stat being a fucking thing, when all the rolling in all the other games is based on different metrics, not a stat.
So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you
I did not.
learned something about how hitboxes work in Souls games. And especially that you learn not to just blindly listen to rage bait YouTube videos that falsely accuse a lot of hitboxes in a game of being broken without having any actual clue what they are talking about.
Oh, dude, the self-awareness is just not here. It is just not here. Oh, he is just not self-aware at all. He is just not self-aware at all. Yes, we saw you go under attacks a billion times. You don't have to... He repeats the same clips over and over and over of him just going under or over attacks instead of through them. Oh my god, he didn't. I didn't either. Sorry, man. I love Dark Souls 2. I don't love your type that plays on others' love for the game by blindly defending it. Yep. Let's see if he has a random useless clip at the end. This might be it. All right. Well, that's basically the end of the video. We got 1 second left. I doubt he can make a point in 1 second, and I wish his videos had a better end point than just stopping. But yeah. So that's the end of that one. Let me check some stuff here. So that was number 5 of 11. We're halfway there. That's the second longest one. So we've got several long ones next. So I don't think we'll be able to get through more than one per sort of run, shall we say, or per stream. But yeah. Now he does some good. I read some of his comments, and some people are willing to retry the game, give it a chance. However, oh yeah, yeah. But this is the thing, right? Is there are a lot of things in Dark Souls 2 that I think are fun. The problem is that it's just a poor Souls game, and I've said this for a while, is that it's a poor Souls game because it radically shifts up everything that came before, and changes a lot of the rules and doesn't really explain them to everybody, right? Like I've said this several times, and I've said this in the stream a few times. If this was the first game in the series, and then Demon Souls came out, and then Dark Souls came out, there would be a lot less criticism of Dark Souls 2 because it would have been the first of its kind, right? So some of the rougher edges would have been looked over, right? They would have been passed over, But because so many of the things that they got right in the previous games were fucked up, changed, without letting the players know, and with just how cheaply they made the game difficult in Dark Souls 2 after Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, it cheapens the experience of the game because it should have been better, right? And this is one thing I've said several times as well, is if Dark Souls 2's content got the same treatment as Dark Souls 1's content, Dark Souls 2 would have been amazing, right? If they didn't have the ADP shit, imagine 40 bosses with the dimensionality of Dark Souls 1 bosses. That would have been fucking amazing. That would have been great. The problem is that a lot of the bosses blend together. A lot of the hitboxes are inconsistent. A lot of the mechanics are inconsistent. Iframe fuckery is something you should totally avoid, right? Because it just fucks with players that don't know it, and so they'll give up on the game, and they won't come back to it. And other people, when they learn about that, will fucking complain about it like we do, because it's like you fucked with a system that had no reason to be fucked with in the past. Like, it's just, why would you change something that works? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, we made it through that, so that's one thing. I need to catch up on chat. Let's see. They will likely inherit his asshole attitude, takes, and unwillingness to see flaws in the game. Yeah, and this is one thing too. By attacking other people's games, you're only making other people hate you and the community that obnoxiously defends Dark Souls 2. You're not helping your side. You're just making the divide. You're just making the divide greater. And that's part of the problem. Is just there's so much fanaticism about different games in this series, right? Not just Dark Souls 2, all of them, right? But there's a level of decency that is lost, where people think that hate is criticism and criticism is hate. They are very different from each other. And while he did levy a lot of criticisms at Dark Souls 1 and 3, he's giving Dark Souls 2 a pass in a lot of stages, and that's part of the problem. Is we should treat all these games evenly. We should judge all of them evenly, especially given how games that should come later should be better than ones that came before. Games should not get worse as they go on. I know that's been a trend in the last decade where game series have just gotten worse, but games should be getting better as they go along, not worse. And Dark Souls 2 is a classic example of almost everything, getting fucking worse than what came before. That's part of the reason why Dark Souls 3 is so different from Dark Souls 2, and why Dark Souls 2 is so different from every other fucking game in the Souls series. They just got a shit ton of things wrong. The developers saw that, and they went back to what a lot of people liked in Dark Souls 3, and later with Elden Ring. Right now, Elden Ring still has problems, but it has sort of A-team problems as opposed to B-team problems. Right? It's just one of those things where we need to be able to talk about all the games with level heads and be like, okay, we can disagree, but we have to acknowledge certain things. We shouldn't be attacking each other personally the entire time. You know, it's just fucking weak as a discussion when we can't talk to each other. The worst was when he seemed to give out a fair criticism only to reel it back and go, oh, well, the other games did this too. It's like, great. So you're okay with this criticism then? You know? Like, just talk about the fucking game. Quit bringing in Dark Souls 3, which came out later. Right? Dark Souls 1, I think you can talk about and should talk about because it came before. But anyway, that's going to be the end of this stream. We're getting through this. Let me check something real quick.
Conversely, there are many...
Let me check something real quick. All right, so... Okay, so just for an FYI, the next video is 24 minutes. The video after that's 22 minutes. The video after that's 42 minutes. Video after that is 34 minutes. Then the video after that is 18 minutes. And the video after that is 31 minutes. So we've got a lot of different parts. And one of these videos is just going over runbacks in Dark Souls 2, which seems like a weird thing to put in this playlist. But I guess it's what it is. I don't know. It's just one of those things. This was great and painful. I know how you feel. I really want to get through this series because I want to play through the trilogy and not have to go through this again. Like, I genuinely just want to play the Dark Souls games again just because this series made me want to go back and play through them just to talk about the problems they each have. But still, it's like, oh man. I'm actually going to look at them and see if he defends Frigid Outskirts. Oh, if he does, that'd be hilarious. I mean, he kind of already did in one of the other videos. But that'll be for another time. I have much to do. If he does, I'm going to drop a comment for damn sure. Yeah. But for now, I have to go. I have to go live my life. So, yeah, I believe I'm going to be available next Saturday for this. So look forward to that. The next part. Depending on how fast we get through the 20-minute videos, we might be able to do 2. Not sure. Not going to promise anything. But we'll keep going through this series as we can, and we'll just see how it goes as it goes when we get there. So that's going to be the end of this stream. So I'd just like to thank you all for watching, and you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys later.